mean, you could just share it too.
Yeah.
We are live. We are in the early stages of a live broadcast across the interwebs with my man Jeremy Goldman, who is typically in the tri-state area, but right now, where do we find you? Somewhere in the great state of Ohio?
How dare you say it's a great state? No, it's actually.
How dare you call it good?
Yeah, it's actually, in all seriousness, I joke about Cleveland, where I'm at now, basically because it gets to my wife, who's from here. But yeah, no, in general, it's a great place to be. I'm just sad I'm not in New York, because New York is my hometown. So
I hear you, man. I'm just getting this loaded up here. I'm trying. We have 2 viewers. It's such a pain in the butt sometimes with the LinkedIn articles. Up there we go. We are live, yay! But it's still showing Sarah Johnson on there, so I apologize, Sarah Johnson. Sarah Johnson had to get rescheduled, so this is not Sarah Johnson. This is Jeremy Goldman. So don't worry about the. Let's kind of fix that up for a second there. We'll get everybody kind of fixed up on that if you bear with me a moment. So Jeremy, while I am just doing a quick edit here. Why don't you just jump on and tell everyone who does not know you, kind of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I wouldn't necessarily say futurist, but what I do is I explore the short-term future, by writing about it, covering it, speaking, at conferences back when we're allowed to see each other again, and try to educate people about the direction and trajectory of where society is going and where technology is going to be bringing us.
Oh man, we certainly do have a lot to talk about on that front. Well, first and foremost, man, how are you doing? How are you doing? How's the family doing? Health, mental, wellness, physical.
Well, mental health, not that great, but it wasn't that great before this anyway. So it's that's okay.
Can't get any worse.
Yeah,
we don't make a joke about mental health.
And I'm not making a joke about mental health. I'm making a joke about myself in general. And I think that it's a difficult transition, for anybody to, like, let me ask you, like, you didn't think like, hey, I'll be homeschooling 45 days ago. Like, you thought the odds of that happening to you ever in your life was 0, maybe. For me,
I mean, I never, it was just never a thought, man. It was just never a thought.
Yeah. And to me, this is, I think, one thing we can definitely talk about if you want to. The things that are going to get you are the things that you didn't think about and you didn't plan ahead. It's much better to have a plan for 7,000 different things that never actually occur than to not have the plan and then to try to make it up on the fly. Because I think what you're seeing is we kind of tried to do that as a society and could have done a lot better if we basically said, okay, what do we do if this particular situation occurs?
Do you have friends that are preppers, or are you a prepper?
It's funny. There's actually short answer is no. I'm a hoarder, but not a prepper.
There's a big difference between hoarding and prepping. They're like kissing cousins, but they're.
I buy limited edition cereals and wait 3 years until they go bad because I didn't even open them. So I mean, but at the same time, I think that there's this really great podcast I recommend to all of our listeners right now.
Yeah, the podcast, right?
Well, I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? I mean, but there's this show On the Media, and they actually discovered that all of the, like, prepper culture, they went underground and, like, really talked about it. And it seemed like basically people just prep for things that, like, they prep in the wrong direction, So
what do you mean?
Like, they basically assume that the issue that's going to happen is the government taking over and taking all of their guns, so then they start, reacting for a particular situation that doesn't occur, and everything that they did wasn't useful in this situation. So it's almost valuable to be, thinking about a whole bunch of different situations in a very light manner, rather than convincing yourself that one specific thing is absolutely going to happen, because it might not happen, and then you didn't spend any of your time thinking about all the other things, right?
Right. I mean, and that's interesting too. I have friends that are very serious preppers. I have friends that are moderate preppers, and for me, it's about ensuring. I always have a extra stash of like significant amount of water. I have a stockpile more than the average person of batteries. I have 72-hour candles. I wouldn't say that I don't have like MRE food rations, but I keep some stuff that's going to be long expiration dates that's going to hang for a little bit too, but nothing crazy. I mean, I'm talking about like a standard, big kind of Tupperware container that I always keep. And then when, this came up, I went to my local BJ's and I bought all the available toilet paper, and I didn't leave a single roll of paper towels left in the store. And now I'm selling it for 10x.
You're the guy.
And that's,
yeah.
No. I have enough. I have enough TP and PT certainly for a little bit. But preparation is everything, man. And I think that we go into Papa Bear mode, right? And a great analogy that I've been kind of saying daily as a mantra. That are you familiar with Dave Meltzer?
Oh yeah.
So Dave is one of my spirit animals in my menagerie. Now, Dave said something right at the beginning of this pandemic crisis that really resonated with me. He used the airplane analogy, right? You get on the plane and the flight attendant is doing the safety routine, and they say, in case of an emergency, sudden loss of cabin pressure, put on your mask first before your child or somebody else. And the point is, you need to take care of yourself first and be your best self so you could be your best for your family.
Oh,
and that
yeah,
And that resonated with me, man. Like that's kind of been my mantra every single day. I need to be physically good, even though I'm battling a terrible allergy season. And I literally think, and I'm not making a joke of it, I literally think I have Corona 3 times a day at a minimum. Yeah. And it hurts because my chest hurts, my head hurts. I'm stuffed up, but I'm not having any other symptoms, man. I'm not having any other symptoms.
I think when we get through this, we're going to find that a lot of people who were like, thank God I avoided this, turned out that they had it.
Yeah, because the symptoms, there's you could be a carrier, you could be asymptomatic, you could have very light, mild things, and that's fine because my family's fine right now. Knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I looked at it and I said, so when this whole entire thing happened, I basically said, like, my work is flexible. I can do, I have 7 different things I'm doing, and I can shift around schedules. Like I interviewed for 2 episodes ago on Future Proof, my podcast, I interviewed Dr. Eric Feigelding, who helped sound the alarms, basically one of the first serious people in the US to say anything about what was happening in China. And I interviewed him at 8:30 p.m. I was telling you this before we started, in a closet, that I had jury rigged just to try to get some quiet in there. And I have this weird schedule that I can work around whenever I want to. So I basically said, when this happened, my wife's schedule was less flexible. She's going to work most of the day. I'm going to take care of them, and then I'll work at nights, and I'll work, on the weekends. When
figure it out.
Yeah, and you figure it out, but you take care, you make sure that your kids are safe and have enough, toilet paper. So
that's crazy. And how old are your kids?
Yeah, 6 3/4, 3 3/4, and 3/4. So. Right. And I know how yours are, because you're a little bit kind of behind me, I guess, on the trajectory. But
well, I got one up on you. I have a 1 up, almost 8-year-old. So she's in 2nd grade, and she has a decent amount of coursework, right? So she's got a pretty decent curriculum. It takes up about 2 hours in the morning, and we're very disciplined to it in routines. My almost 2-year-old has no clue what's happening, which is awesome. I can't wait to tell him about it when he's older. But how are you managing the kids' kind of mindsets, and do they ask questions? Does your 6 3/4 child ask daddy what's going on?
I mean, since I'm always transparent, I love my kids, that each of them have faults. And one of the things about her, it's the best and the worst thing, is she's so spacey, and everything, goes over her head. Nothing goes over the 3 3/4-year-old's head. No. So he almost asks more questions than she does. They know what coronavirus is. They know we left New York because of it. Their caregiver couldn't come in, anymore because of it, because she's not essential. But the WWE is essential in Florida, by the way, which is interesting.
We're gonna pause on that one. I want to go back to that, but continuing the kids' conversation, how much do we insulate them versus how much do we inform them?
I think the key thing is you have to think about, this is a thing that for our parents' generation, nothing like this happened. So this doesn't happen that often. And I think it's probably, Right. And, you know, if you think about it, it's like there's not that much value, I think, in concerning a kid that like this is going to happen all the time. But to know that this is a thing that is kind of historic, it'll probably be with us for a while. This is like our new normal. And I think like kind of like let's assume it's kind of closer to our normal over the next 18 months than
at least.
Yeah. Like basically, like we'll go out, like we'll have relaxed things. We won't be able to do everything. Then there'll be other periods exactly like the period we're in now. But I don't think you have to scare them. You know, I mean, you have to know that like this is a very formative time for, you know, like especially like, you know, when you have like an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that too. Like, you know, everyone says, and you know, when is this going to be over? It's not going to be over. I mean, this virus is here in some form or another. And I'm very curious to hear what the doctor said when you had him on and his thoughts. But like, you know, I hear certain things like it's going to go down. We talk about the herd immunization. We hear about the vaccine that's potentially coming, all these things which are positives. And then I hear negatives like it's going to come back again. It's going to recede and it's going to come back in the fall with the next flu season that comes up. So this is the new norm. This is the new flu. There'll be vaccines. There's ways that we're going to, you know, be, protected against it and immunized, but people are still going to get sick. Hopefully not at this rate. People are still going to die, not at this rate. But there's going to be this new norm, like going into restaurants. And what's that going to look like? Is it going to be, you know, spaced out tables? Are the waiters wearing gloves? Are they giving you disposable menus? Like, what the hell? What do you think, man?
See, this is where I think you're thinking about this entirely right. Because
good.
Yeah. I'm not that you thought I'm going to say wrong.
Finally, tell my wife that, man.
Seriously, I mean, the way that you're thinking about it is right, which is that this is one of those things that has a monumental impact on everything, right? So you kind of have to think like, so what happens, for instance, to restaurants? Look at that in like one little microcosm. Well, you can say that a bunch of different restaurants will have mandated like spacing apart. Basically, that's not going to be a problem in a lot of big deal. Well, so here's the thing. Like, it's not as much of a big deal like where you live, right? Because you can take out some tables from those restaurants. Those restaurants,
more physical space, right?
Right. They've got more physical space, and most of them are not packed to the gills already. And
the financial impact of that too, right? A business, a restaurant doing 50 to 60% less. Dine-in business.
But right, see, like a place in New York where in Manhattan, where in order to break even, you need to sit people in a certain way. Certain places are just no longer sustainable based off of what their lease is. So you have to think about that. And then you're also thinking about other variables, such as how about like the fact that people can't eat at certain places anymore. I think that one thing that'll be interesting to follow in particular is fast casual. Because if you think about it, people can downgrade from fast casual and still get like, the Burger King, McDonald's of the world versus a Shake Shack. And some people will be more price sensitive. Now, the very fancy places, I think that those places, people can still afford to go there. They've got less money in their, 401ks and in their trust funds, but like they're going to be okay. So it's the very high end and the very low end that should be okay. But how about like the fast casual type of places? I think that they're going to be in the world of hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be a whole new world. I mean, I don't want to get in too deep to the whole like socioeconomic disparities, right? I mean, but I do want to touch on that for a little bit. I have a lot of concern about the true urban areas, right? How they're being affected right now, the disparity in how it's affecting, the African-American population, what's it doing to those communities, and especially as time goes on. Right. I think about all the parents that are home, with their kids that may be essential too. Like, what's happening? It's scary, right? Are you frozen? Can you hear me? Jeremy's frozen. He's frozen in time. Jeremy. All right. Jeremy's frozen there. Should I sing a song for everybody? Stay on. Hang with us, everybody. Hang with us. We are live. This is what happens on the live stream. Hopefully, Jeremy will punch out. We'll get him back. Look, oh my God.
There I am. There are two Jeremys. Nice.
Whoa, okay, this is crazy. There we go. So I was talking a bit about the socioeconomic racial divide, how it's affecting people in urban cities who are under that poverty line or at the poverty line. We're talking how it's affecting African Americans, and it's fucking crazy, man.
I mean, it's interesting. Basically, this is like the way that the world works. And I feel sad that there was a point where I didn't understand this. And this is like, we're talking about our kids. I mean, maybe this is a thing we've got to educate our kids about, which is that access, basically, like kind of money, but really like access. If you've got access to people who make decisions that can impact you, you're going to be okay. If you don't have access to those people, you're not, because when they're making a decision, they're not factoring in how it's going to impact you. They're factoring in you know, how it's going to impact all the people who they do know. So, I mean, ultimately, if you have like less African Americans and Hispanic, you know, populations that have access to people who are making decisions, you know, it's a really unfortunate situation. It really screws over a lot of people who can't afford to be screwed over.
Absolutely. And there's also the density idea, and this doesn't discriminate, you know, this goes across, you know, race and everything too. It just, I think that's why New York City is getting hit so hard. I mean, people literally physically live on top of each other. When they have to go to the supermarket, like, you know, out in the burbs here, man, I'm sure you're seeing it, like when you guys have to go food shopping, like they're literally like taped off lines going into the store. They're letting only a certain amount of people on into the store at a time. They can't necessarily do that in the cities and in the urban areas because there's no room on the streets. Like people are like, oh, what are all these people doing on the sidewalks? And I'm not talking about the Hasidic Jews because that's a whole other situation in Williamsburg. But like, you have nowhere to go. What are you going to walk in the street, get in the way of the cars? Like it's insane.
The good news, by the way, this is airing on the second to last day of Passover, which means they're not watching it, so they didn't hear that. But no, I mean, right. I think that in all seriousness, like that's part of the problem with this, that frankly, like I don't get visibly angry about things that are happening that much, but it really bothers me. And I think that a lot of people, you know, who are, you know, I don't know that many people in Wyoming and North Dakota, and I think that they're, you know, I have no problem at all with them. I think that we do need to think about the fact that New York is getting disproportionately less a fair share of the resources to combat this thing, you know, which is a big problem. And when we're thinking about that, we've got to think about the fact that New York and California, and obviously places that are denser and have more industry, support and put money into the federal government so that then it can be dispersed to the Wyomings, Montanas, North Dakotas of the world, right? So for all of your audience, you know, in those states, I'm sure you got like a few thousand each, you know, who are tuning in right now in those states. We have to think about, we have
North Dakota demo is,
we're going to work on it, you know. So
East Dakota is okay. My East Dakota demo is through the roof.
South Central Dakota. So no, I mean, the thing is that you have to think about how this is going to impact you. You have to think from a macro level. If you don't support New York, and New York is a major driver of the overall U.S. economy, then New York goes down, and then as a result, there's less money in the federal government to be dispersed to you, which then we borrow more from China, which puts your kids in a bigger hole. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not how most people think, right? And one of the amazing things that I've seen is the other states that have been contributing, you know, from the West Coast to the East Coast with ventilators and support, because they understand it. They understand that if we help New York now, it's going to limit the spread to us.
Right, right. That's smart thinking.
I mean, that's just smart thinking, and then, you know, we'll pay it back in spades. What are your thoughts on our great governor in New York? I'm curious on your thoughts on Cuomo's leadership, and maybe, you know, do you think he's is there a chance he may throw his hat in the ring?
Oh, you think for this year or for, I mean,
is he our savior?
You know, I think he's doing a really good job, like an imperfect job, because it's impossible to do a perfect job at that level. But I think the thing that's interesting to me about it is, you know, like when you talk about like the throwing a, you know, name in you know, the ring for possibly like president this year even, like I can't help but think about how interesting it is, like the timing of things. Like think about how timing matters when you're trying to guess what's going to happen in the future. Like a perfect example is I really like Pete Buttigieg for a lot of different reasons. Okay. Amy Klobuchar, I liked. Okay. Now, imagine if this virus hit the US at the level that it hit 1 month earlier, okay? And we know that people who are nearly 80 are in major trouble. Do you think that that would have had zero impact on Biden, on people coalescing behind Biden or Sanders? I absolutely think that there's that you can't tell me that things would have played out exactly the same. I'm not certain that it would have gone in Biden's favor, but to pick the 78-year-old in this situation, like if you knew about it, I don't think you would have necessarily rushed to pick the 78-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get, I don't want to go down the, political rabbit hole here, but I do want to talk about how let's talk about the future of November's not too far off. November's not too far off at all, man. How do you think this is going to affect the election?
I mean, it's going to be in now, like normally it's a referendum on the president, and bottom line, it doesn't look that great. If you basically say that this is going to come back around that time, and if you think that there's going to be like a lot of reporting on how this could have been handled better, and if the economy doesn't improve, it shouldn't look that good for Trump, even though he has, some advantages electorally, right? I mean, just the way that things are set up in our country.
Right. If you look at voter suppression, if we look at it kind of voter suppression based on people not being able to go out and where those states are.
Well, yeah, the way that our system's set up is that basically, like the thing that's happened twice where a Democrat has won the popular but has lost the election. That basically cannot happen in reverse. It's the way our country is set up because the Republican Party is so much more rural. You can't have the reverse. So there still might be a situation this year where you have somebody who wins more of the popular vote and still loses the election. And what I kind of worry about is at what point are people okay with that? Like if you win by, I think Hillary won by like 3 million or something. What if somebody wins by 8 and still doesn't win the election? At what point?
Yeah, what's going to happen?
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I mean, and then the next question is, should they are they getting ahead of the curve now and planning for, remote elections, remote voting, and what kind of door does that open up to, fraud and all that kind of fun stuff?
I mean, this is not even political. I don't like Trump, mainly because I've lived in New York for a long time, and it's very hard.
We know who he is.
Right.
You know who he is. Us New Yorkers know who he really is. Come on.
But, and that being said, I think it'll be interesting to see, will they really push so much to, do all of these elections remotely and all of this stuff? Will it actually happen? Because the people who need to be more worried about going to the polls are the people in urban areas that largely vote Democratic. So it would be a little weird for us to just assume that the current administration is going to help Democrats get to the polls. I mean, right?
Yeah, it's going to be scary there. So I want to get back to kind of talking about what this is going to look like when we get back to it. It's definitely going to be a new normal. And I want to talk about people going back to work. And there's a lot of chat out there, which I think is a little misleading. Everyone's like, whoa, look, we've proven that everybody could work from home. Look, everyone's doing it. First of all, I don't think that's true at all. And I think it's taking a lot of things out of context. One, this is not normal, everybody working from home. This is people working from home under stress, under uncertainty. A lot of people working in physical locations that are not ideal for them to do work. People taking care of families, elderly relatives, having to deal with kids. This is not work from home. This is not traditional work from home. But what it is showing is that in a lot of cases that, yes, companies can trust their employees to still get work done. So maybe it'll open up a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more bandwidth, a little bit more understanding, and letting employees work from home. What are your thoughts on this whole work from home thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are going to be changes to. First off, you're the expert on this more than me, but I think that when you're thinking
relative,
when you're thinking about who are the right kind of candidates now, I'm looking probably a little bit differently if I'm a hiring manager. Since I've done a lot of hiring, I would first be thinking, does somebody have some remote working experience? If somebody has only worked in a job that has never required any remote work, It's not that I would enter that person, but I would certainly look at it as a bonus if somebody has proven that they've had long-term success as a remote worker rather than somebody who just did it for 3 or 4 weeks because they had to, right? The other thing, and this is a thing I'm curious that you thought, what you think about, I don't know if I would be as likely to, and this is maybe a controversial statement, but like, would I discriminate, not, intentionally, but maybe discriminate against somebody who has a family versus somebody who doesn't have that extra thing to worry about? If we might think
there might be an unconscious bias. You think there might be an unconscious bias there?
Or even conscious bias where people say, listen, I can't tell anybody this, but I'm concerned about, like, listen, that there are biases in the marketplace because of 100%. Your position, and sometimes you'll have somebody who will admit something to you, but they'll never put it down in writing. And I think it's unfortunate, but given that we know that people in some ways think that way already, I get concerned about a little bit of that happening as a result of this. If there's going to be another wave of it.
Yeah, it's scary, man. And it's really interesting to see how certain companies have, shown their true colors in a positive and negative way, right? There's some companies that have really stepped up and embraced, we're a couple things. One, if they can, not letting anybody go. Number two, continuing to hire. And three, starting people, right, remotely. Like what does that look like?
So I wanted to ask you about that because I know that, I had that note that I sent you on LinkedIn because I wanted to get your opinion, and I can tell people basically what it was, which is I run a digital networking group, and some people were asking me, I was looking for something, or I had a thing and I was furloughed, or I was laid off, and is it even worth it to look for a job now, or should I say screw it and I should upskill myself and learn or freelance, whatever. So I asked you and a bunch of other friends, and a bunch of people, like, I don't say there was a consensus, there wasn't a consensus, but a bunch of people basically said hire, you never know, like go look, you never know, or a bunch of people said hiring is basically on a freeze, but you'll be on the radar, on somebody's radar for when it's unfrozen. So that's largely what I heard, but I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing now. I mean, the ideal conversation in a perfect world with a company is like this. And this is assuming the fact that they have the financial ability to stay afloat, is if you're confident that when the storm passes, and you're going to still have to support clients, business, manufacturing, product development, whatever you create, that you need to continue to interview right now. You need to be, when this storm clears, you need to be at third base, rounding third base, headed for home with candidates, ready to close a deal, and not just be stuck in the batter's box.
Yeah.
That's the last thing that you want. And that's the analogy that I give them. You could continue the conversation, but what that requires, Jeremy, is consistent, transparent communication. And it starts in the upfront, where it's like, hey, Jeremy, we'd love to talk to you, but let's just be very upfront. We're not in a position to hire right now.
Yeah.
What we'd like to do is have this conversation continue. Everything's going to be remote, video, Skype, Zoom, whatever. But when we get there, because I still think that somebody needs to come into the office and see the physical space before accepting a job. In most cases, you don't have to all the time, but at least be at that final stage where that final interview is an in-person interview on whatever that date is, versus just starting. That's the advice I've been giving a lot of clients. And some of them are like, hey, perfect world, we'd love to do that, but that's just not an option right now.
I mean, I'll tell you, it's interesting because, you know this, and like transparently, I'm on the market, but I'm also very busy with a lot of things that I'm working on. So there are a few things. There's one company that I respect a lot where I was very, very close to actually doing something with them, and I think that there's a good chance that they went with somebody internal specifically because of the Cuomo locking things down and everything.
Yeah, they were already like in process, like the person knows it, they don't have to go through the whole rigmarole. Yep.
And also, it's like maybe somebody said like you can still hire for this, but it's not an additional headcount. We're stealing from internally, and. But the reason why I mentioned that is not to just tout myself and tell people make me offers. It's more like when you think about it, you had this company, very established company, like one of the top, tech companies in the world. They were willing to make an offer sight unseen, basically. The manager was in another city, and they're like, listen, we have a good assessment from this person. We've somebody vouched for, like an internal person vouched.
Right, a reference referral.
Right. When you have the referral and people know you, like, what do they think? Like, what are they? You've seen my face. You see how I act. I think you have a decent sense of me. What else are you going to get by seeing me in person? I mean,
yeah,
I walk a little funny. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, I think that's really that, but I think we're getting more accustomed to that in the talent acquisition world these days. And let's be honest, it's been about 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, it's not been years, right? I mean, this is still very new. And there's still hope that it's not going to be for that much longer. But let's talk about that. Like if New York City said, all right, May 1st, we're good to go, would you be going back to an office in the city, or would you be hesitant?
No, I wouldn't be hesitant. I mean, I think it's not one of those things where I say, you know, this is not real, this is a fiction, blah, blah, blah. I just look at it and I say, you know, first off, every company is not good. They're going to have people working in shifts if they could work that early.
Right. It might be like an A/B alternating days kind of thing.
Right, right. I think that, and by the way, one thing that's interesting is there's some companies I've spoken to that don't have a plan yet in place for when you're going to go back in.
How are they not thinking about that?
Like, well, that's to me the thing. Like that boggles my mind, because I think that's the first thing you think about, and then the second thing you think about is everything else. You know, like you need to think about how do you adjust to this new normal, and part of it is what is your transition plan. Like, let's make an assumption that we're all allowed to go back in. Do we all go back in, or do we do that A/B thing you were talking about? You know, do we make it mandatory at the beginning, or do we just open the office? Like, my wife wanted to go in the office. You know, right. She wanted to still go in even when it was no longer allowed. And finally, we're like, you just can't do it. So,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, what is that going to look like? I mean, let's talk about the physical configuration of a lot of offices these days and moved into this open office format, right? I mean, that's going to change up. But I think if you stagger people in the office, and I almost think, like, I mean, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but maybe it makes more sense instead of every other day, it's literally week A, week B, right? Because that gives the same people in the office versus every other day, like cross-contaminate. I mean, if you're looking at it from a statistical perspective, I don't know.
The problem is with it, though, is that there are certain teams that, like you said, close to your team, and your team, in order to be effective, has to all be in together. If there's a team of four, and then two of the people never wind up seeing one another. Let's just say the boss of these four is only in on Wednesdays. So as a result, you know, some of the people never actually get FaceTime with that manager, and as a result, they don't build a close relationship. They're less likely to get brought into big meetings, and that's why these are things that are incredibly important.
That's important.
To figure out. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. And then do you make it optional to your employees? Could you discriminate against somebody or penalize them for not wanting to come into the office if they don't feel safe? Like, that's a whole other conversation and can of worms. Lawsuits. Let's hit, like, could you fire somebody for not wanting to come in?
I mean, if it impacts so this, I think you hit on like the bigger issue here, which is that if every company has basically proven that remote work can work to some extent, then how can you bar it as a company? Because there are some companies that have entirely barred it and had to acquiesce to it like overnight. And once it's been proven that it worked, right? Like, how do you? So I think
how do you go back to it?
You're not gonna. I don't think any companies are gonna want to lose any good performers because of this. But when you get to a point that, let's say, 95% of the office feels okay coming in, and then you've got one or two weird people who just don't want to.
There's always going to be.
Right. I think at that point you can make a decision and say, well, listen, the job kind of requires it, and everybody else is here. But yeah, I think the bigger question is, will there be companies that just say, like, listen, we were scared of remote working and now it's okay. You know, this is a new normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be fascinating. I mean, it's so hard to predict these things. It's so hard to kind of say, you know, what is it going to look like? I mean, you hit the nail on the head too. Like, certain industries, it's perfectly okay. And then let's talk about how that's going to affect, like, commercial real estate, shared office spaces.
I was going to say we work. I mean, in particular, like,
they were ahead of the curve. They knew it was coming, so they just said, "Screw it, we're gonna burn this whole motherfucker down."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, hey, listen, there might be WeWork is like a really interesting case, you know, because it's like, what if you have a model that all of a sudden, and I spoke to a really smart person in the co-working world, David Singer, who created or was one of the owners at one point of Grind, which was like WeWork there, and he was citing something that WeWork said, which is like, what are you guys gonna do when there's like a recession or a downturn? Will people like downgrade to like working at a Starbucks or things like that? And they said like, well, we don't know because we've never been through one before. So I think that now you're kind of seeing, if you're on a short-term lease, that's not a great model when you're entering something that's like between a recession and a depression. I mean, yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, why, if I'm trying to be optimistic, why can't we come out of this and kind of kickstart things? Like, we were in a good place. The economy was humming, man. Like, yes, we hit a huge pothole, but like, why can't we just get shit going again?
I'm not as optimistic as I think a lot of people are on this front, but I mean, and sorry if this is like a downer for people, but I mean,
please.
You do straight talk, so same here. I mean, I think, look at it and I say, well, you want to get back to normal as soon as possible, because you have like you open up that fancy restaurant, let's say, and less people can afford that fancy restaurant, so they don't go to that fancy restaurant anymore. You have a lot of people who are on the market, and some of them are being snatched up by like the tech giants. There's some articles about that, right? So I think that maybe like there are good things that are going to come out of it, but I do think that you're going to have a situation where a lot of people will have less in their savings, so then they're going to not spend, and most of our economy is based off of consumption, so that becomes a big impact. I kind of worry about our standing in the world, because like we basically we are 4.25% of the world population. We have had about 21% of the deaths. Okay, so that means we've done like an awful job from a percentage standpoint, and I feel like that probably means like the economic damage has really been here more than anywhere else. Here in Italy more than anywhere else, and to some extent Spain.
We had more deaths in New York than all of Italy. It's crazy.
I mean, it's so I think it's one of those things where like you can try to go back to normal, but it's kind of like if you sleep with your wife's sister and then it's done, and then you're like, okay, it's done, but we're gonna go back to normal, So coronavirus is like
great analogy.
Sleeping with your wife's sister, folks. Yeah.
Oh man, wow, that is just awesome. So let's wrap this up with a prediction here. Let's get a prediction from you, and I won't hold you to this, but New York City, when are we going to open it back up?
Prediction number one is it will not be like entirely like lights are switched back on. I think that maybe you'll see very, very minimal changes to New York before Memorial Day, and then I think approximately Memorial Day or the week thereafter, so basically start of June or like last day of May, then you'll see like that kind of gradual thing. So this is going to be, with us for a while, and I feel like it's interesting to see how like everybody really wants to do something, but the longer we wait, it is true that like if you're gonna and this is just something I think that's true of like anybody in any strategy, once you pick the strategy, the worst thing you can do is just pick a different strategy in the middle. Like pick the second best strategy and stick to it, and you'll get an okay result. Pick the second best one and then switch to the first best one and then the third best one. It's like, no, you can't do it.
It's going to be gradual, right? It's going to be gradual. And I forgot who. I think it was the governor of California in his address yesterday. It's not a light switch, it's a dimmer, right? That's the analogy he gave, and I think it's a really good one too. New York schools are done. I mean, we have kids in school, they're done. I'm fine with that. Yeah. We're talking about the summer now, and
I'm worried about camp personally.
Yeah, I was just about to get to campus in a second there, but we talk about concerts. I'm sorry. Like we all love our summer concerts, but I think we're going to have to take a little break on that one. I think we're going to be able to gather. I think it's just going to be mindful gathering. The beaches concern me. I don't know how they're going to address the beaches. And there's going to have to be some major social distancing at the beaches. The public parks, are they going to open up? What is that going to look like? And let's talk about the effect if it doesn't. What's going to happen to all these people that are cooped up in the summertime, especially in the inner cities, man? What the hell's going to happen?
Well, I got to tell you one thing about that. The biggest impact for me, honestly, is who I really want to be right now is Colin Jost. You know Colin Jost from
Why?
Saturday Night Live?
Because he's stuck with Scarlett Johansson.
Not because he's engaged to Scarlett Johansson and can sleep with her presumably, or because he's just like an attractive human being. It's because he's probably seen Black Widow. Okay, I was waiting I was so excited to see Black Widow. I'm sure Colin Jost has seen some of it, and now I got to wait till November. So that's why I want to be him.
Yeah,
he's got a good gig.
He's got a good gig too.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's doing all right in life. I mean, the summer camp thing is interesting too, and I guess we're I don't know. I hate to use the term white privilege or first world problems here, but that's right. Like it's a lot of disappointment. I mean, the only silver lining is if my kid doesn't go to camp, I get a nice fat refund back in my account. That's
but you have to figure out.
Well, I got to figure out what to do with it every day.
You have to figure out like what to do with the kids. Like we have a caregiver. It's going to be more work for her, which means I'm going to have to shift my hours to help out around a little bit, right? So all of those things are going to be impacts, right? And I feel bad about that because that means that I can't make as much, which means I can't give as much in taxes or to nonprofits I care about. So it's like I'm not like trying to get a yacht or like shiv somebody with this money. I'm trying to do good things for our economy so that our economy can get roaring again. Same thing with you. So these things are just like they're taking us out of where we want to be in life, and we're not getting this time back. Like this is going to be 18 months off of your life, off of my life, where we're just dealing with this. And I think it'll make us more resilient. Like that'll be the number one thing we should all take away from it is like try to find the person who gets through this who's not more resilient as a result.
I mean, 100%, right? And the other thing too is where everybody's good. Is the only time I can't even imagine the last time in modern civilization where everybody's been going through the same thing at the same time, right? And everybody's listen. Obviously, there's people that are much worse, much better, based on their health situation, based on their socioeconomic situation. But everything is canceled. Nobody's doing anything except the Hasidic Jews in Williamsburg. And it's okay to say that because I'm Jewish, but like except them. Right? Like they're doing their own thing, but we're not even going to talk about that. But everything is canceled. Birthday parties, events, proms, graduations, everything.
And you know what this is basically? It's like, I'll tell you, you like football?
I do.
I hate football, and sorry, it's true.
It's fine.
If the NFL calls, they're gonna. I'll tell them also. Like, sorry guys. Everybody like you were talking about like a thing that like is in the zeitgeist in the moment, and football is a thing that like everybody's talking about like during the Super Bowl. Everybody in the world is thinking about it. Okay, so this is like one nonstop, really shitty Super Bowl. Like. We're all talking about it.
We're all watching it.
You turn on the news. Where will you find anything that has anything to do like not coronavirus related, or even they hint at it? Like in order to get people to like hey, are you down because of social distancing? Well, this strawberry souffle recipe will. I'm like, it has nothing to do with it. Like you're just trying to tie everything in.
Yeah, it's bad, man.
Yeah.
No, it's a bad one, man. So I want to close this out on a positive note here. Give me one professional silver lining and one personal silver lining during this crisis.
Oh wow, so that's a good one. Professional. I think probably the professional one is the fact that my agency that I started and sold last year. When I was running it, it was largely remote, semi-remote for the first year or two. And as a result, I've been able to help a lot of people through this. So I think helping people, matters a lot to me. I know it's the same thing for you. You love helping people. You're a great guy.
I don't like helping people. I feel compelled to. There's times I kind of feel like Larry David sometimes about that, right? Like, hey, do I gotta help you?
Yeah. But no. You're a good guy. You're
I help.
Yeah. And I think being able to do that has been great. And then not to be cheesy, like on a personal level, it wasn't coming to Cleveland. I'll tell you that. No, my personal thing was really the fact that, this is my last kid, Damien, my third, and I've been largely taking care of him during the day. And even though, do I want to do that? No. Would I have chosen to do it? No. But I'll be able to say, like, I largely raise this kid, you know, for a few months, and it was my last chance to do this, like until a grandkid, and I just would have not done that. And like you, I know, like your schedule is disrupted, but like these are kids that are going to be with you for a long time, and you're going to be able to know that you are more responsible for them the more time you spend with them, and you can shep more nachas, as people would say in Yiddish.
I'm really enjoying the family time, and I think that's a silver lining for so many people. I mean, one of the ones that I absolutely love. We have friends that have you know, older kids, where one of them's a junior and the other one's a sophomore or freshman in high school, and up until this situation, the kids were out. They were socializing. They were on their phones. But now it's family time. They have family game night. They have dinners every night, and they're reconnecting. And it's something they haven't done since their kids were, you know, our kids' ages.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not distracted, by the way. I'm literally, I want to take a picture of us doing this, since I know we're, you know, getting towards the end.
Yeah, I gotta do my photo. And then I want to talk about how Florida is being very Florida right now, and how the hell is wrestling essential?
So I actually lived in Florida for 3 years, fun fact, when I was like a little kid, 9 months to like 3 years, 9 months. I hated it. It was really hot. I didn't realize how messed up Florida was until I got older.
And their governor is god awful. He's literally the mini Trump. He's terrible.
Well, the funny thing is like he was like bad going up into his election, more or less, I think. And then he got a little bit better and was willing to like make like decent decisions. But now I'm like, what are you like? Wrestling is so critical. First off, I'm sorry, I've never been big on wrestling, but if like you're like, I can't get by without wrestling as part of my economy, like that's sad. Like if your economy is based off of wrestling, I get it. If your economy is based off of tourism, and that sucks that you can't do that. But I think that when you think about essential workers, and this is like, we go full circle to talking about cutting to the start of the line, because you've got access. If you access the right person who can lobby the governor, like the mayor of this area, you know, lobby the governor, then you're able to get something through. Like, again, my caregiver is not an essential worker, but the WWE is. It makes no sense. I mean, liquor stores, why are they essential workers? Honestly, because some people are sadly alcoholics and would go through mass withdrawal without help. So but still, it's like let's think about it. Why is the school across the street from me you know, why were they doing construction like 3 weeks after Cuomo basically said non-essential worker? Because they weren't told that they had to go home. They just kept on working. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy what is and what isn't. I'm kind of glad to see certain things are working, because you do need to have some cash flow in the economy. But we've seen some great stuff, right? We've seen you know, togetherness, communities like really banding together. We've seen innovation, corporate good, right? We've seen you know, the assembly lines switching, the machines switching to do PPEs and ventilators and all that stuff. Such amazing innovation. We've seen restaurants pivoting their business to be, you know, takeout and curbside, and, you know, generosity in the communities where people buying gift cards and supporting each other, like all the good. And I really just truly hope that we could continue it and we don't go back to the America that we were.
Yeah, amen. I think that's a great way of looking at it. I mean, I think some of the people that I'm interviewing for Future Proof over the next few episodes, you know, are centered on that, like all of the innovation and the positive disruption that's happened because of this. You know, like you will see a lot of good things, and I think certainly corporate America, you've seen more good than bad. You know, absolutely here, like they've taken the lead. Some companies, you know, like REI, you know, closing things before they had to. Starbucks doing the same thing. You know, getting ahead of the curve and basically showing the leadership that the government hadn't yet gotten to. So.
I gotta tell you, man, the Starbucks, like there's a Dunkin' and a Starbucks like a few blocks away from each other by me, and I frequent both. You know, sometimes I like my Starbucks, sometimes I like my Dunkin', and the Starbucks closed early. The Starbucks closed like real quick. Dunkin' is still open, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful that Dunkin' is still open, because we don't go every day like we used to, but we go. It's like a treat for us. We walk there and we have a protocol. We have a Dunkin' protocol. I don't bring the kids in. I glove up. I mask up. I order ahead. I take it. I have to wipe down the coffee cup with Purell, which is it's a new norm, man.
The thing is like we just don't know enough, so we're doing a lot. Like there are going to be a few things that we've done during the course of this where we're going to find out later that were totally unnecessary and in hindsight like stupid, but it's not stupid if you don't know. So you're being like very
ounce
cautious.
of prevention, ounce of prevention, right?
Amen.
Exactly. So I know that you are a aspiring stand-up comedian. Have you written any new material during this time that you may want to beta test? Workshop, as you people like to call it.
Right. It's interesting. Right. So I'm not trying to be super famous, but I, do perform all over, clubs in New York. And I am, working on some new material. I'm actually going to do a show that I'll enlist you to promote. It's going to be next week. I'm trying to get a few of the other comedians to like commit so that we can firmly announce the date and the time, but probably midweek next week. You know what? I'm going to actually, literally as we're talking, message one. I just did it. One of the comics that I want to be in this thing. He's a really good guy. Right. I mean, it should be midweek, and I think we're going to try to do new stuff and probably loop in some type of cause marketing also to do something positive for this. Don't just make it a free show, but like let's charge a little bit so that we can do something positive with this. And I think that if we can do that, then things will hopefully let us stay fresh.
Yeah, and I mean, but what are some of these Corona-centric jokes that you've been working on? Give us one. Give us one.
All right. The trick is like I can't exactly be 100% on Corona. It has to be. I'll give you an example. So, last night and today were actually the 108th anniversary of the Titanic sinking. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
So that means that even before 2020, sometimes people took shitty cruises. See, so it's like I'm working on it. It's not there yet.
I like it, and I sent a crazy meme to my dad comparing Trump to the Titanic. It's a good one there. But we're gonna close this one out, Jeremy. I appreciate you. The banter is always good. It's always a fun time. I'll upload this to YouTube, and we could share it with the 3 people that want to watch us yap. And my wife still doesn't believe that this is what I do for a living, and I have to prove it out to her that this will make me money sometime in the future. But Jeremy, where could folks find you? Where could they connect with you?
Yeah. So first off, go look for the Future Proof podcast. I'd say that's probably one of the best ways. Yeah. Available Google Play, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all the places. Probably one of the top ways to find me. And then you'll probably see me on Twitter at JerMarketer or at a conference near you back when we're allowed to see each other again.
Oh, can't wait for that.
I'll tell you, by the way, last thing, new joke.
Absolutely, man.
Number one person I feel really bad for in all of this is Joe Biden. Not because he can't, campaign, but do you know how many creepy back massages he's had to not do because of COVID-19?
He's missed so many opportunities for just being extra creepy. Yeah, Joe, I really hope Joe Biden just steps up and wakes up, because this is a golden opportunity to take it back. I mean, he's got to put up a fight here, but at the same time, he can't be opportunistic about it, right? It's like I don't know.
It's a referendum on the guy in the office. It always is for the, so it's like people didn't like Jimmy Carter in the late 70s, so they voted him out. Like it didn't matter as much who. Yeah, that's historically how it's been. So we'll see.
We could only hope, my friend. Jeremy, thank you as always for your time. Take care. Everyone catch us tomorrow, time update, 6 p.m. I'm doing Don't Worry, Be Happy Hour with my man, Jamal J. Salim. We're going to have some drinks. We're going to talk about what the hell. Jamal is the Executive Vice President of People and Culture at Complex Networks. So we're going to have a nice chat about that and see how he's holding up. Everyone watching, thank you for joining us. Take care and catch us tomorrow. The podcast live comes back to you. Wash your damn hands. Thank you. Bye. Stay with me. All right.